him too. I'd be like, hey, big boss. And he'd be like, why are you calling me big boss? I'm like, because you're the big boss. And then sometimes I would call him patron, which is the Spanish word for boss. And he's like, isn't that tequila? And I said, yeah, but it means boss. And he goes, oh, that is sick. Patron is the tequila boss. And I'm like, that's right. The boss of all tequilas. And he's the one that tells you, get out. And then you end up bowing, and not in a good way. Okay, so he starts playing with me, starts making fun of me, starts poking at me. And so we started becoming friends. So that's how it started. He's the one that came to me and started like, hey, hey, hey. And I was like, I was taking note, but I wasn't taking note because God had this other man over here that he said was my husband. And I was like, nope, I'm not falling for that. Lucifer, get to step in but because I wasn't interested, I let down my walls. And I've talked about this in the past, where I let down my walls and he was able to see me like no one else has seen me. Now, this man that I thought was the man that God had for me, which was Scott, he reminded me a lot of my ex. He reminded me a lot about the behaviors and the attitudes that my ex had. And that's why I kept asking God, like, why? Why this man? Like, what is it about this man that you think that I should be with? He doesn't, he made fun of the music that I listen to, which, by the way, I don't take that. You're going to make fun of the music I listen to. I'm a rebuttal you. Because I'm not ashamed of what I like, what I do. I'm not ashamed of it. It's who I am. Either you like it or you don't. And so he made judgment calls based on things that he saw, and he didn't ask me about them. He didn't seek God about them. I know he's a man of God because he goes to church. But he still uses his eyes to judge, his ears to judge, and his mouth to judge. And so that is one thing so God used me in his life for a moment because he was trying to get him to come back to him as well. I never questioned God as to why he was using me as the vessel that he was using me. I was just like, I need you to confirm. Like, it's got to be beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is the man you have for me, because I don't think it is. Meanwhile, this other man that I'm working with is trying to get my attention, he's doing everything he can. So here I come, telling him that I got him a $20 tip. And he goes, this is my girl. This is my girl. Like, he was yelling it. And I got embarrassed. Like, I'm like, and in my head, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not your girl. I'm God's girl. Like, Father, I do not come into agreement with this. Like, I do not understand what's going on right now. Like, why is he saying this? That's because in them, he had certain specifications that he had asked God about the woman that he's going to be with. So he already knew. He had already started to recognize that who I was for him, which is why he started to remove the relationships that he was a part of that he didn't need to be with. But unfortunately, his friendship with the boss man. Now, the boss man also paid attention to me. And in the beginning, he would sleuth into areas where I was at, and I'd be like, where did you come from? Like, dude, that is so freaking creepy. Like, he would literally give me a creepy vibe. Like, my spirit was like, get him out of your sight. And then I'd pray. I'd be like, God, please help me, because he does not feel comfortable around him. And so God pulled him away a little bit. But I could still see his eyes on me. I could still feel his eyes on me. So then when God changed my wardrobe to the shorts that I was wearing to work, and, I was losing all this weight, and at this point now, I know Ben and this man, and I'm just like, not interested in the boss at all. Like I got to know his character. I got to know his behavior, his attitude, and so he was dating at the time that I started. He was dating a woman named Danielle, and she had a daughter, and she had an ex who was very controlling and demanding, and was getting interfering with their lives. And there was a woman that was coming in, and at first I didn't notice her, like I didn't pay attention to her until the boss man mentioned it. He goes, "Did you see my ex? You know, she comes in here all the time." And I was like, "What?" I said, "But you have a girlfriend." And he goes, "I know." And supposedly he's in a committed relationship because this is the woman that he wants to spend the rest of his life with. He wants to have children with this woman. He wants to build a life with this woman. And this other woman keeps coming in. Now, this is just an ex-girlfriend. It's not even an ex-wife, just an ex-girlfriend keeps coming in. And I noticed his behavior. I noticed his attitude. Whenever she would come in, he would puff up his chest and be like, "That's right, you still want me." And I was just like, ew. And so God started leading me and telling him, "Dude, this is not okay. Like she cannot be coming in here. You're in a relationship. You have a girlfriend. You are not available." And he took it the wrong way. He took it as, this is his ego. He took it as I was interested in him. And I was being territorial. And I was like, when I realized that he was taking it this way, I stopped. I was like, no. Because he started telling people that I was his protector, that I was his defender. And I was like, you are totally seeing this the wrong way, because that's not what God has me doing. And I did. I told this woman, hey, because of the new, we're being required to tell people that come in here regularly to fill their drink cups throughout the day, that we'll allow you same day, but going forward, if it's a new day, you have to buy a new drink. And I wasn't rude, I wasn't mean. She tried to be my friend. I was like, no. And I told him that. I told the boss man that. I'm like, dude, she's trying to be my friend. Like, she's being all friendly and being like, "Oh, girl." I'm like, I don't know you like that. And I'm like, I think she wants to like be my buddy to kind of get the inside scoop on you. And I'm like, and I don't know anything because I don't know you. I don't know your life. I don't want to know you. I don't want to know your life. And I told this to him. So when Ben and our relationship started to progress, and I could tell he was excited, and at this point God is starting to drop the veil a little bit, and I started to get interested in this, in Ben, and in his behavior, and his attitude, and his mannerisms, and he made me feel so at ease whenever I was around him, which was one of the first things that started, wow, this is different. But I thought he was just a friend. And then God would bring, "But you say he's just a friend, and you say he's just a friend. Oh, baby, you." That's as far as God took it. Because the song is about this girl who is dating this man, and she's off to college, and she's always telling her boyfriend, "Oh, he's just a friend." But God is using this in a different context, where he's saying, "Oh, you say he's just a friend now. Just wait a little bit. He's going to be more than just a friend." I'm like, and I kept asking God, I'm like, "Why do you keep dropping those lyrics in my head?" And he's like, "You'll see." And so, we become friends. We go through this process of getting to know each other, and then the competition comes along, and I start beating him, and I did something, and it was led by God, and I kid you not, I was so scared. Like because at that point, I still thought he was dating the other girl, the other woman. And I know him at this point. I know the kind of man he is, and I know that he's not going to mess with a woman who's not his girlfriend. Like, he's not, like, we're friends, yeah, but he's not going to cross that line. And God said, "Don't give him the spoon." Because I made soup. I made black bean soup. I asked him to tell me what he wanted to me to make him for a meal. And he goes, make me black bean soup. I've never made black bean soup in my life. So I looked it up. And I told him that. I said, I've never made that. And he goes, really? I'm like, I'm Mexican. We don't make black bean soup like that. Like, my family didn't make black bean soup. And so I had to look up a recipe to make black bean soup. And I love vegetables. So when I found out the black bean soup has vegetables in it, and I'm like, but I thought it was just black beans. Well, it's because you take the vegetables and you blend them, and then you put them into the soup. But I was like, I don't want to blend them. I want them to be chunky and rich and creamy and all that good stuff. And so I made him black bean soup. I brought it in the next day. And he looks at, because we're taking pictures for this competition, right? And he's helping me with the pictures because I like the way he takes the pictures. And anyway, so at this point, I'm aware that I have feelings for him, and I just am not aware that I'm in love with him. And this comes shortly after, and that starts us down a rabbit hole because he listens. Anyway, so God leads me. Because normally I would have been like, here you go. And let him feed himself. And God goes, no, not this time. I'm like, what? And he goes, pick up the spoon and feed him. And I'm like, God, I only feed my husband. I don't feed friends. Like, I don't even give friends food. Like, in order for me to feed you, you have to be like someone that I really, truly care about. Like, I've put you in my heart. I pray about you. I would go to the ends of the earth for you if you needed me. Like, that's the kind of friend I am. Because I'm a child of God. And children of God, we go overboard. We tend to take care of the people around us, the people that we care about. And this man and I, we're still, I'm still keeping him at a distance. And here God wants me to do something that is just so intimate to me. Like, I've never been this intimate with a man. Like, not even my ex-husband. I'd never fed him. I never did that for him. Have I always wanted to? Yeah, but I never did. And so, and I'm doing this in a public setting, in a work environment. You can't get more inappropriate than this. And this is intimacy. Like, this is a level of intimacy that I've never had. And the fear that grips me when I'm doing this, I'm like, okay, either he's going to be like, oh, no, thanks, I'll do that, which my ex-husband did. He took the spoon from my hand and he goes, oh, no, I can feed myself. I don't need you to feed me. I'm like, okay, which is why I never tried again. And so my hand is trembling and I'm trying not to drop the food and the juice that's in the spoon. And it feels like the distance between the bowl and his mouth is like a football field. And I'm just like, and I go up and I'm like, oh Lord, please. And he moves in and takes the bite. And he just looks at me. And he says, I wasn't expecting that. And he kept saying that over and over. And throughout, after that point, whenever we talked, whenever we shared something that we hadn't shared before, like our love of books, our love of chemistry, our love of math, our love of astronomy, and I would start those conversations. I'd be like, hey Ben, how do you feel about astronomy? And he's like, what? And I said, well, I said, what's your favorite constellation? And he goes, I don't have one. I said, I do. You do? I'm like, yeah. He goes, what's your favorite constellation? I'm like, Apollo. And he's like, or no, not Apollo. I'm sorry. Orion. I said Orion. And he goes, oh, why Orion? And I said, well, when I was married, and I said, I spent a lot of time alone grilling in the backyard. And I said, and Orion was my only company. So I'd be talking to him and be like, hey, Orion, what's up? You know, how are the dogs? Because, you know, he's got Ursa Minor and Ursa Major. They're representative of his dogs, if you know Greek mythology. You know, so I would talk to Orion. I'd be like, hey, you know, glad you're here, my friend. You know, pull up a chair. Let's have a conversation. And people would hear me and they think I was crazy. I don't care. I didn't care. I didn't care because it was me and the stars. That was all that was up. That was me and there. And he began to open up. And he was like, you know what? Yeah, I spend a lot of time alone too. He goes, I grill. Every Sunday I grill for the week and, you know, make my girlfriends food. But I already knew he wasn't with her because he wouldn't be sharing this intimate information. Okay? That's not the kind of man he is. I mean, I've known him, at this point, I've known him a year, and he's never shared anything intimate about the life with him and this other woman. But now he's opening up and he's sharing the things the nostalgic things, the things that he liked, the things that, you know, he remembered. Now, because I was talking about my marriage and, you know, being alone all the time and being out in the stars and he goes, no, I don't have a favorite constellation. He goes, yeah, but I did spend a lot of time alone grilling. And he goes, I used to take all of the fat and I would grill it and then I would eat it, you know, because he made chicken. I'm like, oh, me too. And he looks at me like, So we've had similar experiences with the people that we were with. And so our conversations got deeper and more intimate. And there was a scar on his arm that I asked him about once. And he told me about what happened and a table being broken. And I said, oh, so you broke it and cut yourself? And he goes, no, I was moving it and the freaking thing just fell out of my hands and I got cut. I'm like, oh, okay. And so we had similar experiences. Now, the reason I said, oh, so you broke it, like meaning he hit it and he broke it. I had a glass table, a glass dinner table. And I was having an argument with my ex-husband. And in his rage, he slammed his fist onto the glass table and shattered it. So when he told me that he got cut with a glass dining room table, that's the memory that came to me. And he goes, oh, no, I was moving and we were going up the stairs and it slipped out of my hands and it broke. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's different. So we have had similar experiences. Now, throughout this time, the boss man is watching our interactions. He sees that we're moving from coworkers to friends, and he knows what's next, and he doesn't want that because he wants me for himself. He was like, oh, no, I'm top dog here. I get first dibs. And I was like, on what? Like, I ain't a piece of meat. I'm a person. I'm a woman. I'm a child of God. In order for you to have me, you got to go to him. He went to him, prayed, and here I am in living color. It's a show from the 80s or 90s. If you're not from that era, you're not going to know. It was 4 single women who were living their best lives, and they were kind of trying to get to know each other, themselves. You know, Queen Latifah's in it. I know her by Trudy, but that's not her name. From Facts of Life. Who else was in that show? There was 2 other women that they were new ones. I hadn't seen them before. And yes, uh, it's a show geared towards Black Americans. Okay, um, I don't say so. Anyway, and so there's a reason I'm going all the way back to this. Okay, so bear with me. And so, God, it was almost like I was a watcher in the natural because I could see this man's behavior. Ben couldn't. Ben was completely like sharing information, and I was like, "Hey Ben, are you a bad boy?" I said, "Because I like bad boys." And he's like, "Well, there was this one time," because I was talking about motorcycles. And he goes, "Well, there was this one time, I got on a motorcycle." And I'm like, did you learn how to ride the motorcycle before you got on it? Did you have your license? He goes, "No, I didn't have a license." Now, when we were kids, there was no such thing as licenses. We got on motorcycles, bicycles, whatever motorized vehicle we wanted to get onto that wasn't a car. And we would learn how to ride on our own. We'd fall, things like that, but we still would give it a try. So I understood what he was talking about. But I was like, "No, Ben, you have to be safe. You can't be like..." And the boss is looking at us both like this. And unbeknownst to him, I'm watching him and I'm going, "What are you doing here?" And I'm talking to God. I'm like, "Father, why is he watching us interact with each other?" Because Ben is getting his things ready for his delivery. So we're having this interaction in this short period of time. And the boss is just like he's overseeing our conversation. And that day, right before Ben went home, the boss calls Ben, and I watch them both walk out the door. And God says, "Oh, he's about to give him his 411 about your behavior and your attitude and what he sees." And after that, Ben pulled back a little bit. And I was like, "What happened?" But he pulled back, and God's like, you just do you, baby. You go and you do your job. That's all you're here for anyway." And I was like, "Okay." So Ben was like, I stopped talking to her and she didn't care. Because that's part of his ego. That's part of his trajectory. Like, that's been his pattern before. That he removes himself because he knows he's a good-looking guy. He knows he knows. God gave me. I good. Most women of the world would have gone after him. Would have been like, "Hey Ben, how come you're not talking to me anymore? Like, what's going on? Like, did I do something? Like, come on." And start rubbing on him, start touching him. And I didn't do any of those things. Mostly because God didn't lead me to. Like, yeah, towards the end, I'd bump into him, or I'd rub up against him with my shoulder or my arm, and he'd just look at me like, "You brat." And I know when we finally get back together, he's gonna be like, "Do you realize what you were doing to me?" And I'm like, "Kinda. Good God told me, but like, I didn't believe it at first." And so, because this boss was putting his 2 cents, trying to separate us, because he had his own agenda that he wanted to put forth. So, because a lot of you may not understand why my husband took a step back and accused me of sexual harassment. Like, that's a pretty strong accusation, right? God allowed it because he was going to use it in the end to free me from the world, from the life that I had before. Okay? And so when I first brought in the food, because I was bringing him food periodically, and at first there was a point in time where he was like, "No, thank you, I'm good," because I said something that upset him, and it had to do with the contest that I was participating in, because in that moment I was still not completely 100% aware that this is the man that God had for me. God brought it back to me over time and saying, do you remember when I told you to cast your net? I was like, yes. Go back through your notes and tell me when you cast your net. And I'm like, the first time I cast my net was this date. And who responded? I was like, wow, I completely missed that, Father. And he goes, I know. It's okay. I knew you were going to. But I used it to reel him in, to become closer to me, to leave the world behind, and to actually listen to what I had to tell him, so that I could cleanse him and I could prepare him to receive you as the wife and the woman that I have for him. And it doesn't make sense to me if I was looking at it from the natural eyes, because I should have walked away. I should have been like, oh, this is not going to work. Now, this wasn't the first time, okay, that he had shunned me. He did this to me a while back without the knowledge of the boss, okay? The boss didn't know that he had said, because he had been planting these seeds of doubt, these seeds of fear, these seeds of questioning my moral character, my ethical character. You know, and there were things that were going on at the time. You know, I was being accused of giving away free wine. I was being accused of all these behaviors that were not me. And then finally, when things began to clear up, he began to see the reality of my character. He began to see the reality of who I really was as God's daughter. And so he began to appreciate me again. And so he came forward and started talking to me. And so, and now God's going, yeah, so you are in reverse now, because he was coming to you and you kind of balked at him and you were like, no, you were running away. He was chasing you and you were running away. And now you had to chase him a little bit, which was the constant texting, we didn't talk very much at work because the boss had made it very, after the confrontation with me and then coming against him, we had to be very discreet in how we talked to each other. He still came and talked to me about the things that I would text him, but it was in a more discreet way. It was less obvious. We would only talk to each other when the boss man wasn't around. Maybe he was in the dining room, or maybe he was in an interview, or maybe he was in the dish area, or maybe he was on sometimes he would go on a delivery run to help, you know, keep our times down, especially on Fridays when we have the crew chief there, and, you know, when he had to go to the bank. But then, because he began to realize that it didn't matter how much distance he created between us, you know, kept him in the door area where he did his prep, kept me in the front area where I do my countering, we always found a way to talk to each other. We always found a way to joke with each other. We always found a way to interact with each other. And so, in some instances, he would send him to the bank instead. And then he'd go and do dishes, or he'd go and take over the things that Ben would do to allow us to interact with each other. And I would do the same thing. I would, you know, whenever I saw him in a certain area, I would do things so that I could be in the same area, so that I could talk to him. Because God didn't allow us to not talk to each other. That time was over. And so he got used to me texting him like a lot every day. And then it was on a Tuesday. I saw him crying. And God told me, be prepared. Like, prepared for what? And I felt to leave. Be prepared to leave. And I was like, okay, all right, whatever you say, Father, I'm here. And so when Friday came and I saw him looking through his phone, looking through the text, the face that he had was that of, at least I'll still have the text. At least you'll still text me. But God changed that too. like, no, you're not going to text him right now. I have texted him, but not like I was texting him when we were working together. And there's a reason for it. So, after I talked about yesterday in the last video about Jonah, and how God was giving Jonah the word the second time, and sent him to Nineveh to deliver the warning of judgment. God had been putting that word in Ben to deliver to the boss man. But Ben decided, oh no, that's not the instruction you wanted to give me. You want me to have her leave. You want me to release her from her job. So he chose which word to deliver. And God said, that's fine, because I knew you were going to go this route anyway. And I need her to have time with me, to be at peace, to be at rest, to not have the things of the world affect her. And the peace I have felt this last week and a half is just undescribable. Okay. And so yesterday, or after the video, God gave me Jeremiah 33:3. Call unto me, and I will show you great and mighty things that you don't know. And then he brought back a word that Bold for Christ gave a year ago, 2 years ago, some time ago. And it was about the boomerang. And I remember the boomerang because every so often I hear the which is the sound the boomerang makes. Yes, I've played with boomerangs before, so I know they make that. That's how it sounds when it's coming back around. And someone, and the explanation that she gave, and God didn't have me look it up. He goes, just write down what she says. Okay. I was like, okay. So boomerang is when someone does something and it has the opposite effect. Okay. So, you see, he did these 3 things, denied me 3 times, got me fired, and he thought, okay, she's free, she's done. But God. So yesterday, I had 2, so far this week I've had 2 interviews. The first interview, this woman felt like Naomi. She gave me instruction. I followed her instruction.